Hello, the Pioneer viewers. Today we are here again with a remarkable report. As you know, the Russian-Ukrainian war continues intensively, especially on the Kherson front line. The fact that we see most clearly on the Kherson front line is the lack of Russian firepower. The lack of Russian firepower causes Ukrainian troops to easily attack Russian positions and establish new era of dominance. Of course, the war is not limited to the Kherson front line because there is a great struggle on the entire front line. And every day, very interesting details about this struggle emerge. Recently, a very remarkable information about the volunteer Russian soldier on the Bakhmut front line has emerged. At the same time, the Ukrainian army is attacking both important weapons in the Russian army's defense network and tanks and armored vehicles, which are one of the most important parts of the Russian army's attack power with the pinpoint operations. In recent days, Ukrainian forces have again carried out several critical attacks. With these attacks, both the defense and offensive power of the Russian army were dealt a major blow. So, what are the details of these attacks? What is interesting information about the Russian military? Let's take a look at the developments together. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so as not to miss our daily map reports and agenda reports we have prepared as the Pioneer team. You can also help us reach more people by commenting on our videos. I try to read all your comments carefully. Now let's start if you are ready, the Pioneer reports. As you know, the Bakhmut front line has been the focal point of the war for a long time. Although the activity in the area has decreased in recent days, we are still facing developments related to the Bakhmut front line. One of the most common events we have seen since the beginning of the war was the complaints of the Russian soldiers. Russian soldiers sometimes complained about the actions of the commanders, sometimes complained about the lack of equipment and basic necessities. Sometimes they criticized the wrong decisions of the war leadership and everything else. The development that has emerged in recent days is an example where all these complaints are experienced together. At the beginning of the war, as you know, the Russian administration made a huge propaganda within the borders of the Russian Federation. Within this propaganda, Russian nationalism was fueled and even brought to the level of hostility to other nationalities. Young people are, of course, one of the biggest victims of this propaganda. At this time, volunteers consisting of a majority of young people who were enthusiastic about the excitement took office of Occupy Ukraine within the Russian army. However, the administration of the Russian Federation did not care about these young people. Normally, young people are seen as the future of a country. However, the people who ruled the Russian Federation took away the future of these young people for their own personal ambitions. One of these young people was a volunteer Russian soldier serving on the Bakhmut front line. The name of the Russian soldier is unknown. However, when we describe the developments, you will realize that we don't need to know his name. As you know, the Bakhmut front line came under the control of the Russian army after the prolonged clashes. The Ukrainian army resisted here with superhuman effort. However, when the time came to withdraw, he had to withdraw. In this way, more casualties were avoided. The Russian army, on the other hand, had no such demands because the Russian administration did not care about the lives of its soldiers. The aforementioned volunteer Russian soldier was one of the soldiers whose life the Russian administration did not care about. During the fierce clashes on the Bakhmut front line, the Russian soldier, who can be called young, almost a child, lost his eye. According to the claims of Russian soldiers, his eyesight has almost disappeared. Moreover, there is no chance of any treatment. In fact, according to the claims of the Russian soldiers, treatment was possible in the first days he wounded, so that the Russian soldiers might not have lost his eyesight. However, as you know, the Russian war leadership is not very interested in these issues. As we have shared with you in our previous reports, one of the biggest shortcomings of the Russian soldiers is the possibility of treatment. The existing Russian field hospitals are not sufficient for the wounded soldiers. The incident starts right here. The young Russian volunteer soldier is no longer able to fight, but his commanders are determined to send him back to the front. The Russian soldier also shot a video on this issue and addressed both the President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, and the world public opinion on social media. The Russian soldier states that he no longer wants to return to the front, stating that he has lost his eyesight and has no opportunity to fight. In addition, the Russian soldier is trying to explain to Vladimir Putin that he cannot benefit the Russian army in this state. This situation reveals the plight of the Russian army from many different angles. Firstly, the Russian army is unable to meet the health and treatment needs of the Russian soldiers. This is a critical situation during a war. Secondly, the Russian army is in a state of destitution. As you can see, the Russian army wants to send even a Russian soldier who has lost his eyesight back to the front line. From this point of view, we can say that the Russian army is in need of even a blind soldier. While there are problems in the Russian army, the Ukrainian army continues its attacks. According to the latest reports, there is an attack carried out by the Ukrainian army in the past days, which caused a great demoralization in the Russian army. As you know, since the beginning of the war, many Russian tanks and Russian armored vehicles have been destroyed by the Ukrainian army. A new one was added to these in the past days. Although it has not yet been located, the Ukrainian army allegedly managed to destroy another Russian tank on the Donetsk front line. According to the allegations, the Ukrainian armed forces destroyed one T-90 tank belonging to the Russian army with a successful shot. It should be noted that the detail of the T-90 tank is very important, because the T-90M tank, also known as the Prorив 3 or Breakthrough 3, was constantly praised by the Russian leadership. Earlier this year, Russian state media reported that T-90M model tank were deployed to Ukraine for the first time. The armor of the T-90 tank is similar to the armor fitted to the Russia's T-14 Armata tank, once considered to be formidable for vehicle. The T-14 did not have the expected impact on the battlefield for Moscow. The T-14 was plagued by developments, difficulties, and delays. Therefore, the Moscow administration has fielded T-90 tanks. An expert also made some statements on this issue. In these statements, the expert on weapons technology and warfare used the following statements. The T-90M Prorив looks impressive, but the Russian tanks also always look good until they're actually used in battle, when the situation somehow changes and they don't have the expected effect. The T-90M is generally comparable to the US Army's M1 Abrams main battle tank, part of which is now in Ukraine. As you can see, the losses of the Russian army are increasing day by day. Moreover, the Russian army's measures neither prevents losses nor allow the further advances, and they require people with the disabilities to serve as soldiers. Moreover, even the latest technologies are insufficient against the attacks of the Ukrainian army. What do you think? How will Putin respond to the message of the Russian volunteer soldier? What could be the sign of a soldier who has lost his eyesight being sent to the front line? What are your opinions about the current state of the Russian tanks? Let me know in the comments. I read and care about all your comments.